What is up, everyone? It is Landman here with another episode of the Cheeseheadz Weekly Podcast. We are recording on a Monday. It is Tuesday episode of the show, the 2nd of April. And happy to be with you again today. It should be fun. We're going to talk some draft stuff, go over what I consider to be the two top need positions for Green Bay, and we're going to go over those and just kind of give my top 5 players of those positions, break down who I think they could pick at those positions, and go from there. So before we get started, be sure to check out the Q&As and polls on Spotify if you're listening on Spotify. Those are a lot of fun to participate in, and we put those out after every episode, every Tuesday. The show is available everywhere you get your podcasts. It is available on YouTube as well. Be sure to subscribe there. And if you want, you can hit the bell to be notified when a new episode comes out every Tuesday. You can also hit the bell on Spotify as well to be notified. Be sure to rate the show on Spotify. You can rate and review on Apple Podcasts as well. Follow us on social media at Cheeseheadz_weekly, except for on X. It is at Cheeseheadz_W. And we post shorts every week. Unfortunately, I did not end up with video again for the episode. Had another issue, but it cut out at 33 minutes this time, so all of my short clips were using that video, so at least they look better for the shorts and the reels. So that's nice. You can check out the website at greycove.net/cheeseheadz. And, of course, there is a link in the description of every episode on every platform, anywhere you get the show, including YouTube, to send in a voice message about anything you want, especially now that it's draft season. Be sure to send in your draft questions if you have any, and or you can comment on YouTube, wherever. DM me on social media any questions you have, and I will try to answer them here on the show. So today could be a shorter episode. I hesitate to say that just because most times when I say it's going to be a shorter episode, we end up going long. But just have 2 positions to go over. I gave my top 5 need positions for the Packers 2 weeks ago on the show. And they were number 1, linebacker, number 2, safety, number 3, cornerback, number 4, offensive line, number 5, defensive line. So we're going to go over the top 2 need positions for the Packers, starting with linebacker. Now, I'll give you my top 5. I didn't look into, especially the linebackers, I don't feel like I know a ton about, but I'll give you what I do know about them and how much I just like them in general. So I will bring up my list here, and we'll check them out. Number 1 on the list is linebacker Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M. He posted a 9.34 RAS score, which is relative athletic score. Kent Lee Platt does that. Be sure to follow him on X, where he posts all of his RAS scores. He has a website as well, which I tend to not use. I haven't found it the best, I guess, but be sure to follow him on X. Let me just find his handle here real quick. At MathBomb is where you can find him on X, so you can follow him there, and that's where he posts all his RAS scores from the different players that have all the testing information. Uses the testing information to do that through the Combine or Pro Days, and that is how we can kind of figure out athletically, especially for people that like to scout players that are into the draft. The RAS scores are an easy way to do that. He ranks them or kind of grades them on a scale from 0 to 10. And, it's a lot of fun, very nice that he does that. So, interesting. I pulled up the wrong rankings, and they looked very interesting. Maybe they were from a long time ago. I don't know. or I pulled up the rankings that I wasn't different than I was going to use. Now my rankings are slightly different just because of what I've heard recently, and Packers types are sometimes different than what just in general the different sites would view players as far as their rankings. But I'm using, just for some more description on the players, for the ones I specifically don't know much about, I am using PFF's top 10 linebacker rankings. They rank the top 10 of each position group, and try to keep that up to date. So on my list is what we're going to go over. I already said Edgerrin Cooper. Number 2 is Peyton Wilson out of NC State, North Carolina State, I guess. And he posted a RAS score of 9.81, so freak athlete, and we'll talk a little bit more about him then. Number 3 is Junior Colson. Did not test enough to produce a RAS score, but he comes from Michigan, and they tend to be known for good defenses there at Michigan. Also, number 4, we have Cedric Gray out of, I believe, North Carolina. And also his RAS score, 8.18 for his RAS score. So nothing spectacular, not too bad either. And number 5 on my list, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. out of Clemson. Did not have enough testing for a RAS score. But from what I've heard and what it says here on PFF, his size and just in general his athleticism, explosiveness is not off the charts. It's not that great, and that could be what hinders him at the next level. We'll start with Edgerrin Cooper, though. Now, PFF does have Peyton Wilson ranked over Edgerrin Cooper. From what I've heard, Packers people tend to like, including Ross Uglum, who I follow pretty closely because he really dives into the Packer types. Specifically, Edgerrin Cooper is a guy he really likes, and I really like him as well as far as a Packers fit. But I'm sure if you're this athletic, and Brian Gutekunst did say in his press conference at the annual league meetings that he considers the linebacker positions to be pretty interchangeable in a 4-3 defense, at least when you're in base defense. And he's not always looking for a specific type at linebacker other than just athleticism and good size, which the Packers value more than maybe some other teams, especially with their higher picks. And perhaps I'll talk more about the Packers draft philosophy in a later episode. Maybe I should have done that before I started diving into some of these rankings. But the stuff I'm doing is very on the surface. If you want deep dives, like I said, check out Pack-A-Day Podcast or the Daily Draft. Ross Uglum does a good job over there. And, of course, there's many guys around the NFL that scout players. But if you want specifically Packers people that discuss more Packers fits, Ross Uglum and the Pack-A-Day Podcast are probably your best bet. All right. So, like I said, Edgerrin Cooper, he has length, movement ability, IQ. Basically, he has all the necessary traits. I'm sorry, that's Peyton Wilson. I'm reading off the wrong one. Length and athleticism is what Cooper's known for, which is similar to Wilson in that both of them are highly athletic, as evidenced by their RAS scores. Wilson to a somewhat greater extent, but anticipation and instincts are kind of the knock on Cooper, I guess. But especially in a downhill type role, he definitely can be a starting caliber linebacker in the NFL. Just the lack of instincts is probably what doesn't put him in the first round, but I have seen him mocked to the Packers in the first round at 25. Definitely a little rich for me, especially if it's not a premium position. It's just the linebacker. Packers' premium positions consist of cornerback, defensive line, offensive line, quarterback, obviously, and seems like there's one more that I'm not thinking of right now. Linebacker is not one of them, however, and neither is safety. So they like to pick edge rusher. That's the other one. So, and last year they did pick an edge rusher. They picked lots of edge rushers in the first round. They tend to like doing that. This year I don't think it's enough of a need that they would, but potentially if someone like Jared Verse falls to them at 25, which is definitely not likely, but if he did, they would maybe pick him there because you never can have too many players at premium positions like that, and they tend to like to pick those type of guys. Now, some people would have said they did reach on Quay Walker. They did pick him in the first round, and some would have said they may have reached. I think a lot of people viewed him as a second-round pick, and to be honest, I think I see a little bit of similarities here with Cooper and Walker. Cooper seems like the type of guy where you just want to let him cook. You don't want to have to let him. You don't want him to have to think too much. Just let him go for it, and athletic and good with tackling. Not as good with the deeper coverage type stuff. I think that's the same with Quay, although they are both pretty athletic, but good working downhill against the run. And they can just play free. So I'm not sure. Again, this is not a deep dive, so I do know that I like Cooper, and I would consider him to be my top linebacker. Number 2 is Peyton Wilson, and he, like I said, has the length, can really move, and his tape, everything looks like a first rounder for him. What will probably keep him from being picked in the first round is just his age and his injury history. He is 23 years old, going on 24. I think he's over 23 and a half now. Edgerrin Cooper is 22, just for some perspective, about 22 and a half perhaps. Not a ton of difference, to be honest, but Cooper isn't extremely young. But Wilson definitely on the older side, and he has had some injuries, I believe 2 ACL injuries at one point. And but if he's healthy, if the Packers actually truly can get clarification, I guess, that he is fully healthy and good to go. I mean, he did test at the Combine, and he tested outstanding with the 9.81 RAS score. So, again, if the Packers get what they want as far as that, maybe they would take him. I'm not sure what the Packers fit is like. Again, others would know that more than I do, but his tape shows a lot. Like, I've watched a few clips of him. He looks very, very good when he's healthy. So Peyton Wilson, number 2 for me, and perhaps number 1. PFF says he's number 1. That's definitely an argument to be had, and I think if Wilson's healthy, he probably is number 1. Okay, number 3, I do have Colson, Junior Colson, out of Michigan. Again, we don't have testing from him. His journey to the NFL at this point, I guess he will be in the NFL after the draft. Has had an inspiring journey. I haven't looked into it, but he has size, good IQ. He's a good athlete, not a great athlete, and so which that'll make him a day 2 pick, which that's kind of what we knew. Basically, all these guys look like day 2 picks. It's possible if we get some real answers on a guy like Wilson, he'll move into the back end of the first round. Packers would not take him there, though. I do know that much. Almost certain of that. Especially if you have a guy that has those kind of question marks. Coulson, day 2 pick. Probably a rotational guy. But, definitely has potential. And another guy I know that Ross Uglum likes. And then after that, it's a little bit of a tier break, I guess. My number 4 guy is Cedric Gray. PFF put him a ways down the list. From what I've heard, he's doesn't look like a great athlete on tape. His RAS score is, you can't really call it average because it's above 5. An 8.18, that's not a bad RAS score, and the Packers would take him on day 2 with that RAS score. If it's 8 and above, Packers tend to take those type of players on day 1 and day 2, and day 3 is when they take flyers on guys. So Cedric Gray, another target for them that I think Uglum also likes to some extent. Have not looked into him. These linebackers, I feel like I know the safety class a little better than the linebackers. I have not studied into the linebackers. I'll have more to say about them potentially later, and for sure I have more to say on the safeties here today. So saving the best for last. And then number 5, we have Jeremiah Trotter Jr., not known for his athleticism, and perhaps that's why he did not test very much. I believe he tested some in the agilities and was not great there. Did the shuttle on the 3-cone, and the shuttle wasn't great, but the 3-cone was okay or something. I'm not sure. I could be all wrong on that. I don't remember. But again, just a smart linebacker who puts himself in the positions to succeed, but I think his lack of athleticism will limit his potential, for one, and just make him unlikely that the Packers pick him. So I kind of doubt that'll happen. Number 5 on PFF's list, I just want to mention this guy, Maurice, Leofa, Notre Dame. I probably butchered the name. Look him up. You'll be able to find him. But powerful downhill linebacker who attacks ball carriers and blockers with bad intentions. This is according to PFF. Again, not as good in coverage and as far as instincts and stuff, but could be a contributor for a 4.3 or 3.4. Tested pretty well in the combine from what I saw. His 40 time was identical to I don't even know who it was. One of these backers, Cedric Gray, I think, 4.64 40. So he's kind of like the honorable mention, more athletic. So it's possible the Packers would take him over Trotter Jr. But again, if Trotter fell into day 3, he'd definitely be a Packers pick then, because he kind of matches, a guy who was a really good player in college, just doesn't have the athleticism that really translates to the NFL. Potentially. But there are guys that are just not very athletic that have worked in the past, and Kingsley Enagbari is a guy that the Packers, that the NFL, from everything, just the way he played in college, people thought maybe he'd go in the second round. He fell to the 5th round-ish. I don't remember exactly when he was picked, and the Packers scooped him up there just because he was good in college. His athletic testing was not great, and the Packers like to see that in a higher pick. But if guys like that fall into day 3, they're willing to take flyers on that, and it's guys with injury histories and stuff. It's kind of the same way for them. On to the safeties. Now, I did say linebackers is more of a need. Safety is still very much a need. Linebacker, they do have some established guys in the rotation and starters there, like Quay Walker and Isaiah McDuffie. And now they have more depth after they re-signed Eric Wilson and Christian Welch. Those guys are mainly special teamers, but definitely give some depth as well. The safety position is they signed Xavier McKinney, and they have pretty much no one else. Anthony Johnson Jr. played a few meaningful snaps, was just okay, and did about as well as could be expected for a 7th-round pick. Did have an interception at one point on a tipped ball. but I don't think he's the guy you want to be your starter by any means. So safety definitely needs rebuilt, and I'd say it's not that much less of a need than linebacker. In fact, maybe more of a need, especially now that the Packers re-signed those two guys for special teams, Welch and Wilson, and they also give depth. Now, I do have potentially, on some people's rankings, the top two safeties would be Cameron Kinchens out of Miami and Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. Now, a lot of people, especially with Kinchens, like the film and don't think he looks very bad on film at all. But for some reason, his athletic testing was atrocious. He posted a 1.83 RAS score. It's pretty crazy how bad that actually is compared to what people thought he would do. I think probably people thought maybe he'd be closer to like a Javon Bullard, who was on my list here, out of Georgia, who's just, a good athlete, not a great athlete, but good enough for what the Packers would like and a good player on film. But, yeah, something happened, and he posted terrible numbers, and he will all but be out of Packers consideration unless he happens to fall late, probably even late into day 3. Like, the Packers aren't going to want to take a guy. That is a really, really low RAS score. I mean, lower than probably anyone they've taken in the 7th round. Like, undrafted free agent type low for the Packers. And Packers just don't take guys that are unathletic. So I did not even include him on my list, nor did I include Tyler Nubin, who was likely considered the best safety in this class. But, again, posted a 2.91 RAS score, not much better in the grand scheme of things, just really atrocious at his pro day. Did not test at the combine. This was pro day numbers. Not good. And now people have said that they saw some lack of athleticism on film, including Ross Uglum. I listened to his scouting report of him. Really good ball skills, and which is why I kind of liked him as a Packer. But again, just the testing was kind of what we were waiting on, like if he can even be a Packer, and nope, apparently not. So I left him off the list too because Packers might be more willing to draft him on day 3. But again, I think he's day 3 only, and he probably will be long gone just because the film is really good overall. But Packers just do not like to take guys that are not athletes, and that could be either a good or a bad move. But overall, I think it's worked for the Packers because they've been drafting really well. So, yeah, again, Cameron Kinchens, Tyler Nubin, not guys that they will likely be picking. Now, number 1 on this list, I do have Javon Bullard, a safety out of Georgia. I listened to Ross Uglum's scouting report on this guy, and from what I gathered, these are just my really quick notes, very surface level. I have here good, not great athlete that can do a little bit of everything and can tackle. And that's one of my biggest things when I'm looking at safeties. Again, I don't always look too deep, definitely not on every single player here and there, but I don't like to get too deep, or it gets a little bit tedious and not as fun, especially if I do it on every single player. I just hear little snippets of stuff here and there, watch a few clips, whatever. But I have here can tackle. From what I've heard, he is a solid tackler, does not miss a ton of tackles, and that is a big thing for me and a lot of players because I've seen the Packers defense. I've seen how they've struggled so much with tackling, especially in recent years, and Darnell Savage is kind of one of those guys, but more than just Savage have struggled with tackling. So that's kind of something I look for. Is this player a solid tackler, specifically in linebackers and safeties? So Bullard can tackle. We don't have a ton of testing. Excuse me. We don't have a ton of testing for Bullard here, but he did run the 40, ran a 4.47 40, so that's not off the charts fast, but kind of what I guess he was expected to run, and that's good enough. Definitely good enough for what the Packers would want, and would definitely work for them probably at the next level. Number 2 on the list, I'm literally revising my rankings as I look at this because I did not put too much thought into this. I'm putting Cole Bishop here out of, I'm going to have to look this up. I didn't write that part down. Out of Utah. That's what I thought. Kind of a late riser, I guess, if you can call this late in the process. Basically, the combine, blew up the combine, and posted a 9.82 RAS score. Really, really good athlete, apparently, and a lot of guys, he had people going back and rewatching the film after that performance, and he's rising up draft boards now. Second look at the film, apparently, is pushing him up draft boards, and I did listen to a scouting report of him. Obviously a great athlete. I have here that he likely profiles as more of a strong safety at the next level due to a potential lack of agility. We don't know that for sure, and maybe I should look up his RAS card here because I don't know what his agility numbers are, or if he tested. Like, a lot of guys don't even test in the agility numbers. I'll just look at him real quick here and see if he tested in those numbers. And it looks like he did not. Yeah, well, here's some more. No, he didn't test in the agility stuff. So, and from what I've heard, the film makes it look like maybe he's not quite, doesn't have maybe like the lateral movement to play single high free safety, because you got to be able to cover a lot of ground and take away stuff over the top, but has good straight line speed, can tackle, and that's a big deal if you can tackle. The fact that he's such a good athlete, I think the Packers, very high on the Packers list, I think, potential targets for them on day 2. Number 3, I have Jaden Hicks out of Washington State. Yeah, the problem with me is I don't follow college football that closely, and so I remember, like, Washington, but, like, is it Washington State or Washington, or, is it, Georgia Tech or Georgia State, if there is a Georgia State, who knows? It's probably a small school if there is one, but, like, there's just so many different schools for each state, and so it gets complicated. Washington State safety, Jaden Hicks, and his RAS score didn't blow it up, but 8.94 is more than enough. Likely only a strong safety as well, but has very good size, probably better size than a lot of the guys here, and is a hard hitter. Can tackle well and likes to hit hard. Number 4 is Kalen Bullock out of USC. Did not test a ton, but ran the 40, 4.48 40. That's good enough, but slightly on the smaller end, I think, and just not very strong. And I have here literally can't tackle. Everything I've heard indicates that he is not a tackler at all. Doesn't play the run and is really pretty good in coverage. Profiles best as probably a single high free safety, perhaps maybe the best guy to play free safety in this draft. But again, if you can't tackle, that does limit you, and the fact that he hasn't done it at the college level means that he'll probably really struggle at the NFL level. And I mean, sure, you could put a bunch of trust in the coaches to fix that, but I'm really just not high on this guy at all. And it's possible he can, go somewhere else and be great, eventually learn how to tackle, or teams can figure out how to put him in the positions where he doesn't have to be that much of a run defender, but he just is not a very willing tackler and just kind of lacks the strength to do it. So he'll really have to put on some muscle mass and really work on that if he wants to be a big-time, full-time starter, likely in the NFL, and specifically if he wants to play for the Packers. And number 5, I have Adrian Taylor Demerson. Pretty good athlete, 8.71 RAS score. Haven't probably looked into him the least amount of any of these guys, but pretty good athlete coming out of the combine. And the safety class doesn't have a ton of great athletes, so put him on here. Not the greatest run defender, and likely profiles best in the slot or in coverage closer to the line of scrimmage. Not really viewed as a single high. Not really viewed as a deep safety, and not great in run defense either, so that kind of limits his ceiling as a strong safety as well. But is pretty good in zone coverage, potentially okay, like as a nickel back, which the Packers could use. All right, so there's my top 5 safeties. Now, you might be wondering, why isn't Cooper DeJean on here? He's listed some places as a safety. I think in college he played outside cornerback mainly. As his main position, he did play in the slot and as a box safety or strong safety as well. But he didn't really play much free safety, and I think he profiles as a pretty good free safety. I listened to a scouting report just today about him. Very well-built player, strong player, willing tackler, can hit hard, very good, would be solid as a tackler. I think he probably profiles best, very versatile player. The main knock on him is that he has tight hips, and so outside corner, which he did play the most in coverage, might not be his strongest position. So maybe as a slot corner, Packers do like Keyshawn Nixon. Now, I do think DeJean would be an upgrade, but the fact that they re-signed Keyshawn Nixon to a longer-term deal seems like maybe it would be best if you could find another place for him if Nixon is good enough. I mean, we do need lots of help at safety and potentially at corner, especially if there's injuries. My guess is I don't really know what the Packers will do. And the thing is, if they view him as more of a safety, maybe they won't want to pick him at the pick 25 if he ends up being there for them, because safety is not a premium position for them. Corner is. So we'll see how it works out. I don't think there's going to be a ton of great corners at the 25 spot. A lot of them, like Terrion Arnold, Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. Nate Wiggins is probably too small for them anyway. He's like a rail-thin corner. Cooper DeJean has been mocked to them a lot. I really like him. I think the Packers should pick him. I don't know if they will pick him or not. So I'm just going to narrow this down a little bit. Cooper DeJean, again, I didn't put him in the safeties, although I think I probably view him as more of a safety, or like as a strong safety next to McKinney, or I guess not next to McKinney, and that's kind of the issue because if you're playing single high, you kind of don't know where to put him on the field other than maybe nickel, so a little difficult to know what to do with him. But again, not on this list. We'll talk about him with the corners, I guess, in a later episode. And Bucky Brooks likes to rank his top 5 at each position, and he has him listed specifically as a slot corner. So, yeah, we'll see what the Packers decide to do in the first round. Not sure if he's a guy that they're looking at or not, but a guy I really like nonetheless. Now I'm going to look over these linebackers and safeties and kind of identify which guys the Packers, I think the Packers will pick, maybe. To me, as far as the safeties, and I saw someone else on X said the same thing, and I reposted it, that it seems like Jaden Hicks and Cole Bishop are like the most likely guys. Pretty athletic, can tackle well, pretty good size for both of them, and pretty good athletes. And in the case of Cole Bishop, an elite athlete. I think those two guys are targets for day 2. I think Kalen Bullock is all but out of the running to be tackled by them. I don't think they're going to want a guy who can't tackle. Dadrian Taylor Demerson, I'm not really sure where his ADP is, like where he would be drafted or could be drafted. They might draft him. Javon Bullard, not a great athlete, and obviously didn't test completely, but the speed was good enough. But the fact that he's not a great athlete, and it doesn't seem like he's the type to do to really be great. He's kind of the guy that does a little bit of everything pretty well, pretty solid, but not a great player at everything. And especially with their higher draft picks, they like to take swings at guys that they think can be great, kind of high risk, high reward type players, especially in the first round. And Bullard, I don't think is a first rounder. Potential target on day 2. If I had to rank which guys I want them to take mixed with who I think they will take, I would say in these 5 players, and these are probably all day 2 guys, Cole Bishop, and then Jaden Hicks, and then Javon Bullard, as far as who I think they will take. And this isn't like ranking them. This is just like the likelihood, probability that the Packers will pick them anywhere. So, and obviously, depending on how long they're available, factors into that as well. As far as the linebackers, I already closed the window for some dumb reason. I'll just open it back up here. As far as the linebackers, I think it's most likely they take Edgerrin Cooper, and then Peyton Wilson, Junior Colson, Gray, Trotter. Like, I kind of ranked them where I think they'll pick them. It's tough to tell, like, where they're going to be available relative to where the Packers are. Whenever I do mock drafts with the simulator, I like to put Cooper, at least the way I normally use PFN's, Pro Football Network's mock draft simulator. It normally ends up that I can get Cooper at 58 in the second round, their first second rounder, but I cannot get him. He normally does not last until their second rounder, which I don't even remember when it is, 70-some-ish, wherever that is, later in the second round. He normally does not last that long. So, and it's possible he won't even last to 58, but it's possible he'll last to close to the third, late second round. Like, you don't really know until you're actually drafting. And Peyton Wilson depends on his injury history and how he fits with the Packers. I don't know. I haven't. There's been plenty of guys on X that have mocked him to the Packers, but it's difficult to tell. And then the other guys are probably more third round picks for them, / early day 3. And Trotter, I don't think will be picked by them at all, just unless he falls a good bit, because not much of an athlete from everything I've heard. So there you have it. Again, very service level. You can go elsewhere and find deep dives. There's plenty of guys out there that are way more into the draft than I am. I really like the draft, and I go way deeper on offensive players for dynasty purposes, dynasty fantasy football, and getting ready for my rookie draft. And obviously offense is just way more fun than defense, but a lot of the Packers' main needs, I think, are on defense. You saw their offense was last year, and it was pretty incredible. So don't think they need a ton of help on offense, and I think defense is really what we're going to be looking at come draft night. So that'll do it for me today. Next week, hopefully I'll go over some more needs or something else draft related at least. Then hopefully eventually I'll have a fun episode just talking. I've thought about putting my dynasty ranks on here. I just don't want to give too much away for those that will be drafting against me in a league. So we'll see, but I do have, at least for some positions, some rankings for dynasty rookie rankings. So we'll see if I decide to put them on here, but I'll at least talk some fun wide receiver targets and potentially running back. Some very low need, but it's possible Packers will draft them, especially late day 2 or day 3, and maybe just do something fun where if the Packers could pick a receiver or would pick a receiver at 25, who could they get? And just kind of my excitement, just because I like offense and I've studied into the offensive players, specifically the receivers, the most out of anyone in this draft class. But again, that's it for me today. I'll be back here, talk corners and perhaps offensive line. We'll see. But just thanks for listening. Appreciate all the support. Again, you can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe on YouTube. All this stuff is easy, and guess what? It's totally free. I don't do any of this stuff where you're having to pay me, and as some people may be confused by the word subscribe. I think you have to pay for something. I'm not sure why YouTube calls it that, but all it does is help build the show for the future, and I really appreciate all the support that you all give. Thank you for listening to another episode of Cheeseheadz Weekly, and I will talk to you all later. Go Pack Go.